I just last week I was not feeling well. I've, you know, it's just one of those things that happened. And tonight, me and Roll Call both about completely forgot what night it was. So I'm not used to being home on Saturdays. And Mr. Roll Call had his birthday bash going on Facebook, and I was tied up with that and just lost track of time. So I do apologize. Rich, what's going on with you?
Yeah, not much. And like I said, pre-chat, don't feel bad about last week. Me and Kingpin had it covered. We
Well,
went for about 3 hours and 45 minutes last week when you were sick and down, so we had it covered.
well, I'm glad. I'm glad. Don't feel like that. If I ain't around, you can do what you need to do, Bubba.
Oh yeah, right after you said you weren't feeling well, I texted him, asked him, "You want Ellis ain't feeling well? You want to do the show tonight?" He's like, "Sure, let's go for it." He's like, "I don't know as much as the two of you, but we can." And I'm like, "Don't worry about it. We'll figure something out." And we had a pretty good chat last week.
So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be discussing a very, I would say, heated topic when it comes to professional wrestling. Um, what were some of the best and some of the worst finishers that wrestlers had? Um, so, Rich, let's start with a few of the worst. Who do you think had the absolute worst finishers?
Well, if you want to talk modern, right now, Chris Jericho probably has one of the lamest finishers currently with his Judas Effect elbow. That I've seen people in New Japan throw a harder looking elbow than that and not pin a guy. So
Um, I've never felt that an elbow drop was a good
this isn't an
finisher.
elbow drop. This is just a shot with the elbow. He does a spinning elbow and elbows the guy in the side of the head.
Well, it's I put that in the same category as the people's elbow.
Well, the people's elbow wasn't really the finisher. That was just a setup to the rock bottom.
Uh, yeah, well, it is just sort of go, no.
Kingpin has a good one out there. He says the Hulk Hogan leg drop. Yeah, he did more damage to himself than he did his opponents with that.
Yeah, exactly. Um, there's been just so many really bad ones over the years. Um, remember the Arn Anderson's Gorg Buster?
Well, that was basically like a reverse brainbuster, and the brainbuster was a finisher for a lot of. There's guys that still use the brainbuster as a finisher, so that's at least there was some psychology behind it.
Yeah. Or Tully Blanchard's slingshot suplex. That was another one.
Yeah, but at least he made it look a lot worse than what some of these other guys do.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
he would actually whip you with it. You got some of these
yeah,
other guys that do the slingshot suplex and it turns into a regular vertical suplex. What was the point of doing the slingshot move?
yeah. They could hit the ropes, come straight up, hold them there, and then they
Uh-huh.
fall back. Well, what the heck?
Yeah, at least Tully kind of combined it with a snap suplex and made it look worse than what it, made it look good as far as being able to pin somebody with it.
Now, I think the belly to belly suplex. Kingpin says.
Again,
I'm going to disagree with that. Yeah, I
again, it's
think
one of those ones that depends on who was using it. If it was
it was it.
Wahoo or Magnum, it looked like it hurt. Some
Yeah,
other guys, not so much.
when if you've ever watched some of the old Magnum matches, when he smacked that belly to belly on you, it was a snap.
Mm-hmm.
He would whip around with you, and it just looked like it was ouch, and broke the guy in half.
Yeah.
Um,
Remember that the whole psychology behind that too wasn't necessarily that he was hurting them to the point where they couldn't get up. He was knocking the air out of them so bad they couldn't get up.
yeah, yeah. The headbutt from JYD, yeah, that was another one that
Mm-hmm.
probably shouldn't have went over as well as it did. Um,
Yeah, but the thing again, you had psychology behind it because JYD, his whole thing was that his head was so hang hard. Anytime he headbutted you, it could knock you out.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, that
Well,
was
that's the same thing with Dusty's bionic elbow.
right.
Anybody else hit you on top of the head with an elbow, it's ouch, and you might stumble a little bit. Dusty
Yeah.
did it, and you flew across the ring.
Except for Bubba Dudley. Bubba Dudley would knock you down with it too.
Yeah.
But he didn't use it as a finisher.
Well, Dusty didn't really use it as a finisher either. He would use it a few times throughout the match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he'd do that whole shake, rattle, and roll thing, and then the elbow drop on the head, and
right.
It worked for him. It for Dusty, that worked.
Yeah, and Colt Cabana, he uses it now. He does the bionic elbow as a tribute to Dusty, and he uses it as a setup to his eventual finisher.
There has been a lot of guys to use a lariat, clothesline, call it what you will.
Mm-hmm.
What was it Jim Ross said that one time? A Russian sickle, unless you're from Texas, in which case it's a lariat, and if you're from anywhere else except Michigan, it's a clothesline. In which case, if it is from Michigan, it is a Steiner line.
unless you're JBL, then it's the clothesline from hell.
Yeah,
and he's from Texas, so I mean,
yeah. And I've seen good clotheslines, and I've seen some bad ones.
The one I wouldn't want to be hit by, Stan Hansen. The guy was half blind, and he would come running at you and hit you with it.
Yeah,
that's what knocked Vader's eye out of socket.
I think as a finisher, I think the best, probably the top three, would have to be Nikita's sickle, because that was just awesome. You'd have to throw Bradshaw's clothesline from hell in there. That was pretty good. And when Barry Windham decided to use the lariat, that was a pretty good clothesline.
I can give you two more from New Japan.
Okay.
Kojima's clothesline. He looks like he tears your head off with it. And then Kazuchika Okada, when he does the Rainmaker, which is he turns you around where he's facing your back, grabs your arm, and whips you around in a circle, and then hits you with it to give you looks like you got a lot more momentum when he hits you from him pulling you into it. And spinning you at the same time.
And now we're probably going to get comments and replays talking about everybody else's clothesline, how bad the Road Warriors clothesline, which it was.
The device.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that to me is a tag team finisher. Yeah.
Yeah, the heart attack.
Those are tag team finishers, not single wrestlers. So we're not really talking about that so much.
Well, you got Kane's flying clothesline off the top rope.
Yeah.
Kingpin's got an interesting one after. He wants to know what we think of the small package. It's the most dangerous move in professional wrestling.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you could be like Ricky Morton, take a beating for 45 minutes in a match, and then right at the end, roll your opponent up for a 1-2-3. That opponent happened to be a Russian with a world tag team title belt around his waist.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's not forget Ricky Steamboat using a small package to pin Ric Flair.
Ric Flair, yep.
World heavyweight title.
Yep. Now, I would say that a small package has probably won more matches, big time matches, than any other move out there.
And there's so many different variations on it.
Yep. A small package is one of those things that you don't expect it, but when it happens, you're like, wow, okay. I've seen Dusty Rhodes win matches with it. Ricky Morton. There's been a plethora of title changes thanks to just a small package. It's, just simple roll up.
Yeah. In New Japan, they have World Tag League going on right now, which is a round robin tag team tournament. And the IWGP Tag Team Champions escaped from their first match using a small package. They were getting their asses handed to them. And next thing you know, Zack Sabre Jr. rolls up their opponent, gets the 3 count, and they run out of the ring in typical heel fashion.
Have you ever seen anybody get pinned with a victory roll?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have, but it's not happened nearly as often as with the small package. And most of the time when it does happen, it's a heel beating a baby face by pulling up the tights so they can't kick out, supposedly. Um, Midnight Range, no Kingpin wanted to know what you think about his small pack. Midnight's got jokes tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you got your 2 cents out early, Midnight. Lord, go back to the Mohawk is funnier. Um, so we've discussed a little bit about some of our least favorites. Give me your top 5 favorite finishers. Well, then let's separate it. Though. Give me your top 5 heel finishers, and then your top 5 face finishers. Because to me, they're 2 separate categories.
Some of those guys will fall into both face and heel.
Yeah, this is true, but
God,
we all know that they go back and forth. But
yeah. One that's generic that a lot of guys have used, probably most famous for Ric Flair, Figure 4. It's a classic.
Yeah.
And both heels and faces have used it.
Yeah, but mostly heels, I think.
Mm. Let's see, what's another one? Scorpion Deathlock. Sting made that look so much more lethal when Bret Hart did.
Yeah, and Sting used it a lot longer than Bret Hart.
Mm-hmm.
People,
Sting, if you watch when Bret Hart does the sharpshooter, which is basically the same move, he does it offset to the side. Sting would be right over top of the guy, so it was more. He was actually made it look like he had more leverage on the guy than what Bret Hart did.
Yeah. Let's clear up a little controversy right now, early on. For those of you who don't know, Sting used it first.
Yes, he did.
And used it best.
Where did Sting learn it?
I have no clue.
A Japanese wrestler whose name I cannot remember right now. There was a Japanese guy over in I think it was New Japan or All Japan, who trains guys over in New Japan now. That it was his move, and he gave it to Sting.
Well, I'll tell you what, Sting perfected it. I don't think he ever won a world title with it, but
yes, he did.
Damn, did he?
Yeah, I believe he did. I believe he won one of his world titles with it. I know he won world tag titles with it.
Yeah,
in the U.S. Championship and.
Yep. So that's 2 for you.
Yeah.
We got the Figure 4 and we got the Scorpion.
Which, if you think about it, they're almost the same move, just one's reversed.
Yeah, pretty much.
Let's see. The simple Boston Crab. I mean, if you look at that move, that looks like it hurts.
Yeah.
Especially when Jericho would put it on you when he used it as the Lion Tamer. When
Lion Tamer.
More up and down, vertical with it.
Yes.
Not only did that look like he was hurting your back and legs with it, it looked like he was hurting your neck with it as well.
I've often wondered why he changed and went down to the other style of Boston Crab. Because, like you said, when he held them up vertical and he'd put that knee, look like right in her back and started pulling back on it, that looked like it was absolutely about to break somebody in half.
Yeah.
That might be why he stopped using it, because he was actually pulling some muscle somewhere.
In New Japan, that's considered a rookie move. They got young lions. The guys in training are only allowed to use certain moves, and one of the finishers they're allowed to use is the Boston Crab. So none of the big name guys use it, except for none of them. The only person you'll see them use it if they're trying to embarrass somebody, because that's the young guy move, you know. The only person that's gone over to Japan and actually used it as their finisher, who's not one of the young guys, is Jericho.
Yeah, well.
Let's see, trying to think of something else. There's so many. Savage's flying
Yes.
elbow.
Yes. Yes. That's a hell of a move. And the only person in the business I feel that had an elbow drop off the top nearly as good as Savage was Shawn Michaels.
Mm. A more modern one, but Kenny Omega's One Winged Angel.
Okay.
Have you seen that one?
Don't think so.
He gets the guy up on his shoulders, spins him halfway around where they're spinning on his left shoulder, grabs him by the head, but with his right hand, and then just dumps him on their head as he's falling to the mat.
Ow. Yeah, that sounds painful.
Mm-hmm. And it's named for one of my favorite video game characters, Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII. Kenny Omega's a big video game guy. And he loves Final Fantasy VII. He actually, at one point, came out to the ring dressed like Sephiroth from the game. Anyway, that's where the name of the move came from. Sephiroth was the one-winged angel, and hence the name of the move.
Okay, so that's got you down to 4.
Yeah. I was a huge Magnum TA mark as a kid, so I'm going to say the belly suplex. When he hit specifically his, when he hit you with that, you knew the match was over.
And he pinned a lot of stars with that move.
And that was like Randy Orton's RKO, which is another one that would be an honorable mention because it would literally come out of nowhere. He could hit you with that thing out of nowhere.
Yep. So my top 5 for pure faces, guys that spent most of their career as a face, I would have to say number 1, Scorpion Deathlock. Magnum TA's belly to belly, have to put that in there. There's just so many. Daggone. You're sitting here and you had this in your head, what you were going to say, and then all of a sudden, you go blank because there's just so many. The flying crossbody was always one of the good ones from Ricky Steamboat coming off the top. That was another one I really enjoyed, especially when he was doing it.
Yeah, and if you want to go that route, Jimmy Snuka with his flying crossbody from where they would be laying on the mat, and he would come off the top because unlike everybody else that seems to do it, he didn't touch the mat with his hands and feet first.
No, he landed straight.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Who else? Bill Goldberg's jackhammer, of course, because that was a move that I had just from day one. I loved the jackhammer. I just thought that was the absolute coolest move in the world. Another finisher that you really don't see a whole lot of anymore that I liked was a double arm chicken wing. Remember that?
Yeah, there's a one of the young guys over in New Japan uses it.
That just looks like a very, very painful maneuver.
Yeah, Marty Scurll combined that with a crossface. He has the crossface chicken wing.
Yep. Now, talking about 5 heel wrestling finishing moves that I really, really have always admired, you got to start off with Jake the Snake's DDT. That was just an amazing move, and the way he landed it was just phenomenal. There's been a ton of DDTs since. I don't think anybody's looked as good or was sold as well as Jake the Snake and whoever he was wrestling with, because they'd always sell the hell out of that move.
Yeah. Check out some of Jon Moxley's matches where he's using the paradigm shift or the how's he called in the Death Rider is what he calls it in New Japan. His he does his is a double underhook style.
Mm-hmm.
He either does it straight like Jake does, or he elevates the guy in almost like a brain buster kind of thing. But people sell it like Jake's would be sold.
Yep. Another heel finisher, I'd have to say, going with your route, Randy Savage's top rope elbow. That elbow was just nasty. And it was always on target. I don't think he ever botched that move coming off the top. It looked like he was always pinpoint accurate no matter where the guy was laying. Ric Flair's figure 4, that's another one I'm going to have to borrow from you. He might not have won a whole lot of matches with it, but he used it to great effect. It was just one of those moves that you seen it coming, and as soon as he started working that leg, you're just waiting for it. Kevin Nash's power bomb, that would probably be another one. And the Undertaker's Tombstone Piledriver.
The Undertaker's last ride.
Well, yeah, that was brutal. But there's just something about
that. If you're going to go power bombs, I would put the Undertaker's last ride above Nash's power bomb.
I don't know. To me, I think that the way Nash or even Sid Vicious did their power bombs just looks so much more powerful.
I don't know, because Undertaker, look at some of the guys he did the last ride to, and he didn't just pick the guy up and slam him down.
Yeah.
He picked the guy up, picked him up again, straight up over his head, and then down with the slam.
Yep.
That just looks so much more vicious than Sid Vicious or Kevin Nash's standard power bomb that they did.
I don't know, man. When especially Sid. When Sid would grab him up and he'd use all that upper body strength and just force him down. It looked like
the Undertaker did. He literally picked them up again. He had them up on his shoulders, ready to slam them down.
I know.
The second time off his shoulders and then slam them down.
Yep.
Well, if you want to, also you got the Razor's Edge.
Yeah. Scott Hall's finisher there,
which was kind of bombish.
It
was a power bomb kind of thing.
Yeah.
Before anybody else started doing sit-out style ones, which there's another one for you. Batista's sit-out power bomb.
Yeah, that thing was another one that looked absolutely brutal. But it didn't make the list. It looks cool, but it didn't make the list.
Yeah, there's so many different power bomb variations out there these days.
Oh yeah. And, well, it's just like there's so many DDTs and pile driver things out there now. I mean, they're the Falcon Eagle. That's a heck of a look. That's a vicious looking maneuver. Or what if Falcon Arrows once called?
Yeah.
That's Michinoku drivers.
Yeah, when you're going with the Falcon Arrow, I think Seth Rollins does the best one because he combines it with a superplex. He does the superplex and then rolls into the Falcon Arrow from there.
Kevin Bash was boring. I heard an interview, someone say Kevin Nash only knew 5 moves, 6 if you count his hair flip. Well, Kevin Nash himself has said that he's got 5 moves.
Mm-hmm.
So when the guy said it, he said, I'm limited to just 5, but they all 5 hurt. I think that was his quote from the end. I've got 5 moves, but they all 5 hurt. So, I think that's probably one of the most underrated and underappreciated finishers would be a sleeper hold. I've always enjoyed seeing somebody that could use a sleeper hold effectively and make it look good.
Yeah,
And
so many variations on those now. It's unreal.
yeah, there's a dragon sleeper and the cobra clutch. Good Lord. What was
Kazuchika,
yeah.
Kazuchika Okada does one that's basically it's a modified Cobra Clutch. He calls the money clip.
Well, Ted DiBiase used $1 Million Dream.
Mm-hmm. Roddy Piper with the standard old fashioned sleeper.
Yep. And how many matches did he win with that?
Mm-hmm. Nobody wins with the standard sleeper anymore.
No. Well, here's the thing: the moves that as kids watching wrestling you'd see have now been so overused that they just it don't appeal to anybody anymore. Look at a DDT. A DDT has so many variations by so many different people, and it's just lost its appeal. A DDT now, in my eyes, equals out to about the same as a vertical suplex. You just see it so many times.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys that still use them as a finisher or a setup to their finisher, but they have a different variation on it. The standard DDT is just a move anymore.
Yeah. And I think that's a shame. I think that when you take a move like that somebody, come up with and use to the effect that Jake the Snake Roberts used it to. Because if you remember, there was a time when, and then grant you, it was part of what was going on in the storyline at that time, where they were trying to quote unquote ban the DDT.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jake had to fight to keep it in because it was such a devastating move. And now, if they would try to bring an angle like that, people would just shake their head and laugh.
They did manage to ban the pile driver from WWE. There's only a couple of guys that are allowed to use one.
Yeah,
Owen Hart broke Stone Cold's neck with it.
Yep. Well, it was banned for a long time before that. It had been banned in WCW for years. It was a very special occasion when they would allow someone to use any variation of a pile driver.
Yeah, the only two guys that were allowed in WWE to use a pile driver with any regularity were The Undertaker and Kane.
Yep. And that's because they were big enough and strong enough to pick the dude up and come down without hurting them. And they knew that. In WCW, there was a few guys that got away with using it. Terry Funk used it when he was there. Sting had used a tombstone pile driver from time to time. Dusty Rhodes beat Bubba Rogers with a pile driver in a in a tag team match. Bunkhouse tag team match, by the way, with the Rock and Roll Express. Paul Orndorff used to use the pile driver, but you don't see that anymore. And I understand why. What happened with Austin and Owen. That was, Austin's lucky his career didn't end right there permanently. And okay, so RKO versus the Diamond Cutter. Who do you think did it better?
I'm going to go with the RKO. I've seen Randy Orton hit that thing out of so many different positions that Diamond Dallas Page just wasn't athletic enough to do it from.
I don't know. I remember seeing Page catching people jumping off the top turnbuckle and catching them in midair and hitting them with it.
I've seen Randy Orton catch people coming off the top rope doing a moonsault and catch them with it.
Yeah.
He literally would catch them, flip them, and hit them with the RKO at the same move. Because remember, the moonsault, you're coming off backwards. He would
Yeah.
catch them by the back of the head, turn them, and then drop with the RKO.
Yeah. Well, that's impressive. I still have to give the nod to DDP. You know, I think that I don't think it was because his looked better or he was as athletic. I think it was just the build up to it, the persona of it when he did it. Remember when Chris Canyon was using the diamond cutter? There for a while, every time you seen Canyon on screen, he was just diamond cutting somebody, out of nowhere. Um, that was when he was having that angle with DDP. It's one of those. I've always liked the cutter. I always thought that was a very unique move. And now there's what 4 or 5 different variations of that. I've seen guys put another guy on the shoulder, hit him with a cutter. Top rope cutters. I've seen that. It's just, but I'll always say that my favorite would have been the DDP diamond cutter.
Yeah, I'm going to put the RKO just a smidge above it, just a smidge, because of the various ways I've seen Orton hit it that DDP didn't, and some of the guys that RKO had hit that has been hit on too. I mean, good Lord.
Oh, he's taking out everybody with. I mean, he hit the Big Show with it. I mean, you hit a 500-pound dude with a move like that. Well, that's kind of impressive.
Yeah, I mean, you got a guy, like I said, the moonsault, and you got another guy coming at you with a 450, and you catch them in a 450 with that. I mean, that's insane. You know how precise you have to be to hit somebody doing a 450 with the RKO?
Yep. You have to have perfect timing. And Randy Orton had the ability to time it almost to an absolute fault.
Guy spearing and you catch him with the RKO.
Yeah.
A guy doing a running kick like Drew McIntyre's Claymore kick, if you've seen that, and Randy Orton somehow catches him and an RKO out of it. It's insane the way he catches these guys doing the RKO.
Yeah. And it's always out of nowhere. That's what I've always loved about the cutters. It's just a snap boom move you don't see coming, like Magnum TA's belly to belly. You never see it coming. It's just there.
Or Arn Anderson's Spinebuster.
Exactly. Which is another move that, I don't think anybody in the business will ever have a Spinebuster that looks nearly as good as Anderson's.
I think a couple of guys over in New Japan that do devastating looking Spinebusters.
Yeah, but maybe it's just because I'm biased and old school and still stuck in the 80s and 90s. But that Spinebuster from Anderson just looked like it was putting you through the mat.
Yeah, speaking of Anderson, have you seen another guy by the name of Carl Anderson when he does it? No relation whatsoever. He's not even kayfabe one of the Andersons. His name's just Carl Anderson. I think he may have been trained by Arn at one point or worked with him or something. His Spinebuster looks like Arn's when he does it.
Yeah. Now, there's just a lot of moves out there that I get wrapped up in my head with just one person or one team doing, like a sidewalk slam. When I think sidewalk slam, I think of one team and one team only, Harlem Heat.
Double flapjack, because that was another one of theirs too.
Yep. That's just, when I think of certain moves, I think of certain wrestlers. When I think of the diamond cutter or any cutter, I'm thinking Page. When I'm thinking Spear, I'm thinking Goldberg. Corner splash, Sting, It's just...
That's why it's called the Stinger Splash.
Yeah. Well, depending on who's using it.
Well,
I
no,
would.
that's the move. That's the name of the move. Whenever somebody's doing it, they call it the Stinger Splash.
Yeah. Um. If that's the case, are they going to start calling press slams the ultimate slam?
No, that's just a gorilla slam.
Yeah, exactly.
But the Stinger
Exactly.
Splash, Sting was the first guy to do it, and they call it the Stinger Splash.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter who's doing it, they call it the Stinger Splash.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard anybody call it a Stinger Splash,
Oh
other
yeah.
than Les Sting's doing it.
Oh no, JR does it all the time. He was doing it when guys were doing it in WWE
Yeah.
before Sting ever was in WWE. Yeah, and by
Yeah.
that point, Jim Ross wasn't anymore. But yeah, they just call it the Stinger Splash now. That's the name of it. New Japan,
Mhm.
somebody does it, it's the Stinger Splash. Somebody does it in WWE, it's the Stinger Splash. It's just the name is stuck.
Yeah. But nobody hardly. How many people do you see actually do it other than Sting?
Oh, there's a few people that do it. One of the ones that does it's Tamatanga, Haku's kid. He does
I
a
mean,
pretty decent one. It's,
so,
it's not a hard move not to do properly. You just run at the guy and jump at him
yeah,
while they're
pretty
in the
much.
corner.
But I have seen Sting screw it up. I think it was a match he was having with, if I'm not mistaken, it was Rick Rude. He went to do that splash, and Rude was, I guess, was supposed to move out of the way, and Sting was supposed to hit the turnbuckle. He flew over the turnbuckle, and you actually could see his head bounce off the steel ring post. So he knocked himself freaking senseless.
Oh, I've seen people do that with a lot of different moves.
Yeah, and just, I mean, he hit that, and and the thing about it was with the way the camera angle was at the time, he did. You know how when you throw him into a post or something, that arm will come up, and
Mm-hmm.
not here. He was just head first, pop, and he had to have been on Dream Street.
Oh
There's
man,
just no way.
yeah. One of the worst I've seen recently was what you were saying. John Moxley had whipped somebody into the post, and they were there, and he was running right after him to do a move on them. The guy slipped and fell, and Moxley head first into the AEW corner post. Now you've seen AEW. That is not a round post. His
No.
head hit right into that corner because they used the square post, busted him wide open the hard way.
Mm-mm-mm. You know, that's the thing. They call wrestling fake. They say that some of the injuries you see in this stuff are just horrific. Um, you know, botched moves happen and people get hurt and it sucks. Look at and my favorite example of that is always the Sid Vicious off the top rope deal. Remember that? Sid comes off the top, he lands wrong on his leg, the leg just snaps, and he's laying in the middle of the ring.
Was
Just,
that the top or was that the second rope?
I think it was the top.
Either way, man. Yeah, I know what you're talking about because I remember watching it. His leg literally bends in half in a way that it's not meant to. You're getting
Yeah,
ready to hit
about
Scott
yeah,
Steiner with something, and his leg
yeah,
just snapped.
and it was like 6 inches below his kneecap. That was the
Yeah,
problem.
yeah. It,
So it ended his career. That
no,
you
he
know.
wrestled after that.
Oh yeah, but never like he used to. Never like he did before.
Yeah, I mean, it was like his leg was a piece of paper, and somebody bent it in half.
Yep, it was it. That was one of the few times I about got sick watching a professional wrestling show because it just looked that gross. It was like, oh Jesus, and you
Yeah,
knew he was feeling it. You
yeah.
knew he was hurt.
He didn't break just one bone in his leg. When you hear that one bone in your leg doesn't do that, you got multiple bones, or he broke both of them.
Yep.
It was just a
Eh,
fluke because he didn't. This is something that somebody would have done a million times and not got hurt once. You know?
Yep. He just landed wrong. It was,
Yeah. It's like
um,
who was it? It was Seth Rollins went to do one of the moves that he does all the time, where somebody's trying to get him in a superplex or something. He slips down below between their legs and then hits him with a power bomb from the corner. He tore his knee up, tore his MCL and his ACL. Just a fluke thing.
Yep. Well, do you remember when God, what's the kid's name? He was wrestling Jericho that night, and her got I guess he tore something in his leg.
Yeah, okay.
And Jericho,
Jericho and the referee got into it.
Yeah,
that was Adrian Neville in WWE. Everywhere else they call him Pac. Yeah, he broke his ankle, and Jericho's like, "I told you he broke his ankle," and the referee yells, "I didn't hear you, MFer!" And everybody in the arena heard the referee cussing Jericho out. And Jericho said on his podcast he was about to punch Charles Robinson in the mouth. Little Nate almost lost a few teeth that night. Jericho was pissed.
But yeah, man, there have been some serious injuries in the business. One of my favorite stories was one that Jim Cornette told about Baby Doll, of all people, knocking him absolutely senseless one night. Keep in mind, before Baby Doll, if you don't know who that is, she came into wrestling in the early mid-'80s as a valet to Tully Blanchard. They had matches back and forth with Sam Houston and Dusty Rhodes, and finally Dusty, or I think it was Dusty, beat Tully Blanchard to get Baby Doll. Baby Doll had to go with Dusty for a month, and then he came back and went back to Tully, and then after a while, she came willingly back to Dusty. It was wild, and during all of this, Dusty and Magnum had a thing going with the Midnight Express. Well, Jim Cornette was always bad-mouthing Baby Doll. And I guess the angle was Jim Cornette was supposed to be running his mouth, and Baby Doll was supposed to come up behind him and hit him in the back of the head. Here's where you have to understand that Baby Doll, before she was in professional wrestling, she threw shot puts. She's got an arm on her. She was an athlete in her own right and a very strong young lady at that point in time. And apparently when she hit him in the back of the head, it just knocked him flat senseless. Apparently she didn't pull it nearly enough. And I heard him talking about that on his show one night, and I just busted out laughing because I remember it happening. There's been a lot of guys. For instance, who was that actually got burnt with a fire in the face gimmick?
Garvin.
Yeah, well, it was. Yeah, one of them actually really did get burnt by it, and took him out for a few weeks.
Yeah, and they turned that into an angle where Jimmy Garvin turned face, saying that they were kayfabe brothers when they actually weren't related in real life.
Uh-huh. So, shit happens in that business, and you can call it fake all you want. But
do you remember who it was that threw the fireball in Garvin's face?
Jim Cornette.
Yeah.
Jim Cornette. Absolutely. Thought you had me, didn't you?
No, I was just asking if you remembered who it was.
Uh-huh.
You do it to me all the time. Do you remember this?
Yeah, it's Jim Cornette. And they actually had a pretty good run with them guys too. I mean, that turned into a pretty intense little rivalry for a little while.
Mm-hmm. The Garvins versus the Midnight Express.
Mm-hmm. And then it went straight from that to Garvin against Ric Flair.
Mm-hmm.
Because Ric Flair was going after Precious, which culminated in a steel cage match. Rick versus Jimmy, Jimmy does a leapfrog, comes down the other side, hurts his leg. Ric Flair hits him with the figure four, and I think that's one of the few times Ric Flair actually won or kept a title with the figure four.
Yeah, and then that went on to Rick versus Ronnie, and Ronnie beat him for the world title. I believe it was on one of the Clash of Champions cards, wasn't it?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure. I do remember Ronnie not having the title, but about a month.
Yeah, he didn't hold it long. Well,
No,
nobody did back then if it wasn't Flair.
No. Well, here's the thing. I think at that point in time in the NWA, what they were trying to do is find a face persona that could match up with Ric Flair's heel persona.
Yeah, okay. You got to remember too. All this happened right around the same time that Magnum had his accident, because he was the guy that was supposed to get that spot.
Yep.
And they were filling in, basically throwing in guys as a fill-in because they didn't know. They were panicking at that point.
Yep. And then this little unknown dude shows up with face paint on, and just happens to come in at the right time. And
Great
all
place,
of this was going.
great moment.
Yep. He showed up in right in late '86 to mid '87, somewhere around there. In '89, he goes a 45-minute time limit draw with Ric Flair. Clash of the Champions.
It would have been later than that. It had to have been around '87 because he came over in the UWF merger.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was late '86, early '87, mid '87, somewhere around
mid '87.
Yeah, and he just stepped into that role that they had planned for Magnum. It took him 2 years to get to the point, but Sting went a 45-minute draw on Clash of the Champions with Ric Flair, and it made him a household name.
Well, he was over as soon as he stepped into the WCW ring. I mean, everybody went nuts for him, especially. You got to remember, around that time period, UWF would have been competing with Crockett Promotions in the same area.
Yep.
So people already knew who he was. And to see him on a Crockett Promotions WCW broadcast, that was the ultimate, that just lifted it even higher. And he was the guy from that point on. It was just a matter of getting him booked to be in the position. But as far as the crowd was concerned, he was over.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I'm trying to think. After the Clash of the Champions, that was '89. How long actually was it before he got the title the first time?
God.
It wasn't long.
No, it wasn't long. Had to late '89, early '90.
That's what I'm thinking. He wins the title. He does win the title from Flair eventually. He loses it back to Flair. I'm trying to remember the events as they happened back then. Flair leaves, takes the title with him, goes up north. They come up with the
WCW World Title, but
that's
all they called it.
And there for a while, they had two world titles going on. They had the NWA and something else world title.
Well, the NWA was out of the picture by then.
So yeah,
they had already left.
Yeah, well, they
WCW International and the WCW title.
Yeah. Either way, it was two world titles, and at one point in time, that title was held by Barry Windham. It was held by Big Van Vader. It was held by
Ron Simmons.
Ron Simmons held that title. God, in that little a short period of time, it was held by a bunch of dudes. Rick Rude held it for a little while. So, speaking of that, who do you think deserved to be a world champion and never was? I have a list of guys.
Oh yeah, Piper.
Definitely, that was top of the list.
Valentine.
Yeah.
Don Morocco.
Absolutely.
Jake
Roberts,
yeah.
Scott Hall.
Scott Hall, when he was
But,
sober.
I don't. Here's the thing, though. I think some of these guys just didn't really want to be the world champion. I think that they liked what they did. They loved what they did. They just weren't interested in the time and the effort that they'd have to put in to actually be the face of the company. Because back then, everybody worked most of the year. You worked, 365 days a year. You're working 350 of them. You're on the road, you're moving. If you're the world champion. So these guys were never home. They never got to see their family, especially back in that day and age when, the highways weren't what they are today. And it would take you 6 hours to drive 200 miles because you were doing it all on 2-lane back roads doing this the whole way. So, it's, today it ain't so bad. Back then it was rough, and being a world champion meant you were on the road. Now, that being said, in the late 80s to early 90s, a lot of the territories had already went under and others were on their way out. So it was getting to the point where Vince McMahon had everything he could get up in the north. WCW was buying everything in the south. And you had the big two. By the year 1990, I think the only ones that were really left was the USWA and the AWA, other than NWA and WWF, right?
The AWA was gone. God, when did they fold? Because they folded. I don't even think it was far into the 90s when they folded.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. The early 90s, we still had USWA and the AWA, and they both went under. Jim Cornette had his Smoky Mountain thing going.
Well, that wasn't until later.
Yeah, that was what, 95, 96?
Yeah.
So you didn't have a whole lot of territories after 1990.
Okay.
Yep.
And going back to Sting real quick, his first reign, I was just researching it, looking it up. January 11th, 1991.
Yep. Okay.
Well, that's when it ended. So his first one.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, though. Did you type in
July
WCW or NWA? Because
no,
remember,
I'm looking at Sting's biography.
Oh, okay.
His first championship reign began July 7th, 1990, ended January 11th, 1991, and that was the NWA title still.
Yep. That makes sense. I knew it wasn't too long after that, because that match with Flair happened in what?
Yeah. The month that Sting lost it back to Flair in a rematch from the Starrcade matches was January 91 where it transferred from being the NWA title to the WCW title.
But yeah, that title did a whole lot of hand changes in about 3 years. And then Flair shows back up in the WCW, and right after Flair gets back, Hogan, Savage, and a bunch of guys from the WWF shows up down south. Flair's got the title. Hogan beats Flair for the title. Vader gets the title again. There's just a big uproar. Sting joins the Four Horsemen. Four Horsemen turn on Sting. It's a huge mess. By this time, Lex Luger is in New York doing his thing. Lex gets sick of being in New York. Sting gets him his job back by talking to Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff lowballs Luger. Luger accepts an offer that Bischoff didn't expect him to accept, but he did.
Yeah, Big Show was like, I gave him this offer thinking he would go away. I wasn't expecting him to accept it.
Yeah.
He thought
Yeah.
Bischoff flat out says it.
Yeah.
He was just go away. I'll give you the worst offer possible if you just make him go away.
Luger comes back to WCW. Not making nearly what he should have been making. Not that Luger was a great in-ring talent, but he was very popular at that time. Luger shows back up. Road Warriors at this time has the World Tag Team Championships. The Road Warriors don't trust Luger, and they keep telling Sting not to trust Luger. Sting don't listen. Luger and the Road Warriors and Sting have tag team matches, which the Road Warriors, of course, beat them about 90% of the time, but that's neither here nor there. Flair and Hogan do their thing. Hogan's world champion.
About this time, the Steiners are playing around up in the WWF.
Yep.
So they're not around.
Yep. And then we're probably into 95, 96, somewhere in that area. So, a year later, the NWO happens, and we know what happens from there. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the entire history of the WCW we just laid out for you.
Oh, partially, anyway. There's a lot more.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a whole lot more that happened in between there, but that's just the general way things went on. God, man, I remember most of that crap. And here's the thing. Sometimes at night, I just don't sleep. And I'll be laying in bed and I'm thinking about old wrestling matches and things that I've seen and things that have happened in wrestling, 30 years ago. And just certain things pop in my head and I'm like, I had forgotten about that. That was cool.
Do you remember the White Castle of Terror?
Yeah, to Kevin Sullivan.
No,
that wasn't Kevin. No, Kevin's was the what was it? What did he call that match?
The Tower of Doom or something.
Yeah, the Tower of Doom. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the White Castle of Terror was Vader. That was Vader's creation.
Yeah.
It was a filmed vignette where Sting got on a helicopter.
Yeah, that's right.
Fly to where Vader was, and Vader's like on this throne in this cave, and there's a bunch of midgets around him and stuff. It's really like, what the hell were they thinking?
Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, God, see, stupid things that happen in wrestling, ladies and gentlemen. Stupid things that happen in wrestling. Remember the spin the wheel, make the deal match with Jake the Snake Roberts?
Yeah, they just did the spin the wheel, make the deal thing at Halloween Havoc in NXT.
Sheesh. Good Lord.
Well, you know where they got the spin the wheel, make the deal from, don't you?
Not right offhand, no.
Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. I was thinking it had something to do with some wrestling before that, but no, you're right. I remember that now.
Yeah, that was the thing in the Thunderdome. You spun the wheel and you made the deal, whatever the wheel came up as.
What did that match actually end up being? I can't remember.
The original one? I don't remember either.
I know Sting won it, but I can't remember what it was. But he did beat Jake the Snake Roberts. God. Yeah. And like he said, I just gave you a partial history of the NWA and that WCW time period. There was a lot more that went on. Ron Simmons became the first official Black World Heavyweight Champion. Mm-hmm. And as far as I know, that was in any organization at that time.
No. Technically, I mean, the only one that officially gets recognized by the WWE anyway. You had Soul Train Jones, who would go on to be Virgil, that held the one world title in one of the federations. I'm trying to remember what it was.
Well, The
That was in the 80s.
Iceman Parsons had a world championship, didn't he? In what USWA or one of those he was in. I can't remember. I think he had a world championship. Why they didn't ever count that one, I don't know. But he did hold a world championship, if I'm not mistaken.
Who did?
Iceman King Parsons.
Did he hold the WCCW title?
He might have. He held one. I'm pretty sure he held one.
Yeah. Okay. Midnight wants to know, what was Stunning Steve and Stone Cold Steve Austin's persona? What was the name he went up? What was the name he went by between being Stunning Steve and Stone Cold Steve Austin? He was the ringmaster, managed by Ted DiBiase.
Yep. That was when he first came into the WWF.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And DiBiase gave him the $1 million title.
Here's one for you. Name two guys that Stone Cold Steve Austin used tag teamed with in the WCW. And one of them he actually held the World Tag Team Championship with.
Yeah, Brian Pillman.
Yep.
And, Bobby Eaton.
Yep. That's it. That's it. Wow. I'm not used to the Travi sending messages to us. It's weird. By the way, Midnight, check your telephone. I sent you something earlier today. I thought it was hilarious. Well, guys, we've been going for about an hour. I'd like to say I thank everybody for showing up tonight, but I think we're going to call this one cooked and done. What says you, Mr. Rich?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, we can't do this every week for 3 hours and 45 minutes.
No.
Yeah, one of these days we're going to have to get Kingpin to come on here as a special guest. He knows more about wrestling than what he lets on.
I'm sure he does. He's always in here. And Kingpin, I'll tell you what, next week we'll get you in here with us. We will grill you for information, sir. Hopefully, eventually, we'll get Mr. Sarge in here back with us. We haven't had him on since I've had this thing going again. So, and I miss talking to Sarge. Anyway, guys, I appreciate each and every one of you. You got anything to plug, Mr. Rich?
Yeah, be sure to tune into This Week Unloaded tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. It'll be episode 101. We had episode 100 last week. If you haven't seen that episode yet, go back and watch it. We did a bracket on World War II movies, classic World War II movies. I'm not going to tell you who won. You got to watch the episode to find out.
My vote would go to the Big Red One. That was a damn good movie.
That's not what won.
Well, it should have.
Oh,
the
one that won was a damn good movie too. One thing you find out when you're putting together a classic World War II movie bracket is just how many World War II movies John Wayne was in.
Oh yeah.
Most people think of him as a Western actor. Yeah,
he was in a lot of them. The Fighting Seabees was
that one even on the bracket.
The Fighting Tigers. He was in the Flying Tigers. He was in Sansa Iwo Jima. God, he was in a ton of them.
Leathernecks.
Flying Leathernecks.
Back to Bataan.
Yep.
The Longest Day.
Yep. He was in a ton of World War II movies.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly enough, he was such a good actor, he ended up not playing the same character 15 times. Which is a hell of a thing to say. Considering he did make the same Western 3 times.
He only played the same part twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rooster Cogburn. He played Rooster twice.
Yep. He certainly did. Great movies, both of them. Anyway, guys, we're going to call it done for the night. check me out Monday night for my actual regular show, as we're going to call it. Monday night, I will have Mr. William Collins on the show. He is a custom knife builder. He builds them by hand, and he does a fantastic job with custom knives. I own one myself. I'm going to have him on. We're going to discuss the ins and outs of making a fantastic knife and blade. So be sure to check that out. I will catch you guys later. Y'all take care. God bless.
Bye bye.